We played the last 40 minutes of that game like we were down a goal in the last 2 minutes. Like, it's wonderful. We put up, 34, 36 shots over 2 periods. But we had put ourselves in a position where we ended up playing a game that you really don't want to play. I like the energy. I like to compete, the fight, the ability to bounce back. I think it's very difficult to have a period like we had and then be able to change your game. So very pleased with that. We've played 30 periods of hockey this year, and one of them we didn't like at all. The rest of them, the first periods in our game have been our strengths, so we'll get back to it. We have to make amends for the way we started our last game.
Even with all the new pieces, you talked about how much you've liked the team defense this
Yep.
season. What is it about how defense is working, whether it's the forwards, the defensemen, the goaltending? What is working so well for this group this season?
I think your forwards drive almost all of your defense by how much the position that they put your defensemen in. Do they allow them to hold lines? Do they allow them to make a good gap? So many times a D pinch in the offensive zone is either considered great or really foolish, all depending on where the forwards are. We ask those guys to make those reads very, very quickly, so what the forwards do matters. I like the way our forwards have worked for our defensemen. 4 new guys back there on the blue line, so there's all new systems for those guys. There's a learning curve to that, but our forwards have worked hard.
You've kept the D together for 10 games now.
Yeah.
Now it looks like you're making a change.
Yeah.
Is it just time to see what Mike can do?
Yeah, you know what, that if we were starting, if you'd asked me this before the opening game, I would say Mike would be in within the first 3 or 4 games. But they played well, and because we got 4 new guys, a little bit reluctant to start pulling defensemen in and out of the lineup. But he's practiced really, really hard. We've had a couple of games where some of our defense hasn't been fantastic. It's a perfect time to get a guy in. Everybody's kind of got their feet wet. And I think even when you take a player out now, he'll come back in with some confidence and some edge.
Uvis coming out.
Correct.
Yeah.
You're now in the midst of a pretty hectic schedule here. How do you go about navigating the travel, the fatigue, just keeping players fresh? Well,
minutes is one. You do manage your bench a little bit more when you start to see the back-to-backs come up, and then it's an 8-day trip. Now we're going to go out to the West Coast after this short. We got an in and out of Washington. Minutes, but that's even secondary. We've got a sports science group here, and we measure these guys just about every day in terms of how they're feeling, how they're sleeping, and I'll listen to them. So if they come in and tell me that we're a little under it, we'll pull back in practice. We have a whole recovery program that we kind of do. And our players are aware of that now. It's one of the benefits of things you do get to take out of the playoffs and implement next year. We would do this on almost all of our off days in the playoffs. They're used to it. So we just manage the output. As long as we're getting what we need on the ice in terms of that work level, we try to be as respectful to their bodies as we possibly can. We don't have any punishing practices. But they've worked pretty hard this year, so we haven't needed to do that.
I spoke to a couple guys in the locker room about the possibility of wearing a neck guard. I mean, how important is that with everything that's been talked about around the league so far?
I always like when the player has the individual right to choose for himself in just about every issue. I do. I think there are things that, this is not an event that we see, thankfully, much at all. But what we saw is how catastrophic it could be. So I would certainly encourage anybody at any level, if you find a piece of equipment that keeps you safer on the ice, you absolutely should wear it. At the same time, there's places for players to make their own decisions on how they want to protect themselves, and they have that right to do it.
I mean, I was talking to Barkov and Rodriguez, and they both said that the league had a meeting and they strongly encouraged wrist protection already.
Yep.
I mean, is that kind of a direction things are headed towards?
Yeah, but I think that's not so much mental decisions, like in terms of progress there. It's technology. They now have things that they can put on their wrists and they can put on their ankles that are cut resistant that wasn't available to these guys. There was a long time the guys didn't wear socks in their skates, right, because they like the way that feels. So now we have the technology to give players the opportunity. If you're a player that's never had a cut and you hate the way it feels, I understand not wanting to wear them. But very soon, it's a little bit like visors, even though prior it was coming into the league one way or the other because it's just safer. So as the technology improves, the visors don't fog up as much. They're better shaped. The guys don't mind wearing them. More and more, these safety features will come in.
And they're used to them too. I mean, they grew up with them.
Well, that's 100% right. Like there were 3 guys that lost sight in their eyes in the Ontario Hockey League in 1984. I was one of them.
Right.
And visors were in the league the next year. But the players now, I would never think about going on the ice without one, right? So when I was 7 years old, you didn't wear a visor, right? You had this strap, and that's how old you are. If they had a strap-on mouth guard, oh, then that was it. So nobody hated their kids then. We just didn't have the technology to do it.
Like helmets.
Well, maybe my parents.
You have Ekblad and Montreal for the last couple full practices.
Yeah.
How's the progression been, and are they on time? Are they a step ahead on time? How's that been for them?
I'm going to say they're absolutely on time in terms of the normal window and probably potentially ahead of what we would have thought at the start. So you kind of give these injuries 4 to 6 months. But you're probably looking at around 5 months of healing. They're going to be ahead of the 6 months, but they're probably going to be fairly close to the 5 months, which is great. So our biggest fear, why we would say to you, this thing could be into December, because that would be the 6 month from surgery, and that's possible it happens. But their rehab and recovery has been very, very good.
Any possibility Montour returns in the next week, 10 days, 2 weeks?
Well, you just gave me a no on the first and yes as we got toward the second part. There's a chance that near the end of the trip, and then when we come back for the homestand off the West Coast, we could see 1 or 2 of them.
Okay.
Okay?
Cool.